Hello and welcome to this week's vlog. This week's episode of the Bikini Chronicles is all about spilling the tea on the shit they don't tell you about bikini prep. Now, I put up a poll on my Instagram asking people, what are you interested in knowing about? Do you want to know how me being an applied psychologist has impacted on this prep this year? Or do you want me to spill the tea on bikini prep? And there was a lot of votes for both, but the bikini prep one got a few more, so I'm going to cover that this week, but next week's vlog will be all about the way that being a psychologist has impacted on this prep this year. So let's get into it, because there's a lot of things to talk about, and I want to make sure that I cover all the important points that I think are relevant, or that I think that, yeah, you don't really know about a prep before you go into a prep. But I'm going to try and not ramble on too long, because I could talk about this for ages. But let's get to this. As I said, P.S. I do have a cheat sheet to remind me of all the things I want to cover. So the first thing is that, and I mean, this might be obvious, but prep is a choice. So you hear this all the time, people reminding us that, oh, prep, you choose to do prep. And it's so freaking true. Now, obviously it's a hard choice that you're making. You are choosing to commit, upwards of 18 weeks potentially to developing your physique, to getting extremely lean, to competing, which also means that you're committing or making the choice for the next, 5.5 months for most of us who do a longer season, to track your food daily, to be on point with your cardio daily, to be on point with your steps daily, and to be very, very anal about all those things for the foreseeable future. And that's a choice that you are currently making. And I think that, especially for the first prep, because it's so hard, it can be easy to forget that it's a choice that we're making. And I always believe, and I suppose a lot of things that I'll say will tie in with psychology, but language has a huge impact on how we respond to our environment. Now, if we tell ourselves, I have to do cardio, I have to do this, I can't go off food, and use that type of narrative, things can become a heck of a lot harder to contend with, as opposed to if we reframe it and tell ourselves, actually, well, I get to choose, I'm choosing to do this. A lot of people have kind of popularized that notion that prep is a privilege, not a sacrifice. Now, I understand where that narrative comes from. I just don't know whether calling it a privilege is necessarily helpful, because when we call something a privilege, then we feel like we owe it something. So, oh my God, prep's a privilege. I can't believe I get to do this, therefore I have to do this. And that already can start to create some rules or some sense of obligation to prep, when actually it might come to a point during your prep where it's not a good idea for you to continue on. And I'll come to that in a second later. But yeah, I think that remembering that prep as a choice is just so important. And it can help you reframe so many situations. Like when I jump on the cross train in the morning, I think I'm getting better at it now. At the beginning, it was a bit harder, ironically, because I was doing less cardio. But you can be a bit like, oh my fucking God, I cannot be arsed. Yet now sometimes when I jump on, I'm like, well, I'm choosing to push myself to this level. I'm choosing to literally take my body past that level of normal leanness. I'm choosing to really go where not many people want to go, or where not many people feel able to go. So I'm choosing to do every single minute of this. So I'm gonna make it count, and I'm gonna commit to every single minute that I spend on the cross trainer, in the gym, doing whatever it is that I need to do in order to be able to achieve my goal, because it's something that I am currently choosing to do. And reminding myself that it is a choice does take a lot of pressure off me, because then I go, well, actually, if I wanted to, I could literally stop. If I wanted to, on a really hungry day, on a day where my energy is really low, I could literally choose not to do my cardio, I could choose not to do my steps, I could choose to just eat whatever I want. But when I put it that way, I'm like, well, do I want to make that choice? And actually, that choice isn't in alignment with my values right now. And the reason why it's not in alignment with my values is because I value prep beyond just getting shredded. I mean, anyone who has competed more than once will tell you that it cannot just be about aesthetic goals. when you make the choice to prep, it is about developing yourself in the process. It's about, yeah, you want to do well, of course you do, but it's not just about getting shredded. It's about seeing when you can take your mind, seeing when you can push your body, and about embracing all the lessons that you know are going to come off the back of a prep, whether you've done it before or not. So remembering that it's a choice is, oh my gosh, like that's the main thing. And finding ways to remind yourself that it's a choice is something that no one tells you that you're going to have to do, because it does get hard. You are going to have dark days. You are going to have days where you feel fucking miserable for no reason. And if you want an example of that, watch my previous vlog where I was a miserable cow for the whole of last week. And yeah, that's one thing that no one tells you. Like, you're going to have to reframe situations and remind yourself of why you're doing this. And if your why isn't strong enough, I'm sorry, but it's just not a good idea to prep. If all you want to do is get lean, prep's not for you, sorry. If you're doing it to mask other behaviors, it's just not the right avenue to go down, and anyone who's working with the right coach would know this, or the coach would be able to pick up on this. So yeah, prep is a choice. You choose to start, you can choose to stop, you can choose to finish. It's up to you. But it's a choice that you're choosing to make. So remind yourself of that. The second and perhaps like more obvious thing that you will know is that food's going to get low and cardio is going to get high. But what they don't tell you is that food's going to get a fuckload lower than what you thought it might have to go, and cardio and output is going to get a heck of a lot higher than what you thought. And what this means is that your energy is going to be non-existent. Some days are easier than others. Today I feel great. Today I'm getting a refeed. It's a great day. But I also felt like fine when I woke up, and not every day is really hard. But yeah, your food will gradually decrease and your cardio output will gradually increase. And the better you look, the worse you'll feel. And in those moments of hardship, that's when you're really going to have to push. Sometimes I have clients who are dieting, not prepping obviously, but dieting, who for whatever goal, who tell me in a check-in, oh, I felt really tired yesterday, so I didn't do my steps. And I'm like, well, you're gonna still have to do that. And that's the thing with prep, is that if you want to bring your best, and not just physically bring your best, but step on that stage or in front of that camera for that matter, knowing that you have given it your absolute fucking all, you can't, or you should choose not to let small things like that slip. Because small slips like that of like, oh, I'm too tired, I'm not going to do my steps. I mean, what do you expect coming down the road for you? It's not going to get any easier. It's going to get a heck of a lot harder. And guess what? You're going to have to continue to do even more steps, to do even more cardio, and to go and train, hitting your numbers on even less food. And it's going to be fucking hard. So it is going to, like, I think people have an idea of what it might look like, but actually in practice it's just so different. This year I'm on way more cardio than I've ever done. I think partly because I'm doing cardio on a cross train as opposed to say on a Stairmaster, which is obviously harder. My steps are kind of where they have been before during prep. My food has been higher throughout this whole prep relative to other ones. So that's, again, each prep is different, but yeah, food's going to get lower than what you thought, and cardio's going to get higher than what you thought. And I think an important thing to note here is that that's part of the risk of a prep, and that's why going into prep with the right mindset and in the right headspace is so important. Because you hear this a lot of people saying, oh my god, bodybuilding gave me an eating disorder. And I don't mean to dismiss people who really do genuinely struggle with eating disorders and with disordered eating patterns off the back of a prep, but that wasn't the cause necessarily. It might have been things that were already underlying that prepping obviously exacerbates. It has been shown over and over again that dieting, it poses an increased risk for food focus, for body shape focus. These are things that you need to be aware of before even going into prep. And if you've not done your homework ahead of it, it could leave you in a really compromised place. Now, this is why having a coach that is aware of these things is super important. But it's not that the bodybuilding or the prep itself gives you the eating disorder. It all kind of develops off the back of a context in which, yes, you are putting yourself in a situation where these factors, like, you do have to be more food focused when you're prepping, because guess what? When you choose to prep, you are committing the next 5 and a bit months to weighing out all your food, to tracking everything that you eat and drink, and I mean everything, to constantly thinking about, I need to get my steps and I need to get my cardio and I need to make sure that I get to the gym. It's not like in an off season where like if you miss a day or whatever for socializing and all that, it's fine obviously, and it's important that you do that too. On prep, like you can't really, if you want to step on stage again, if you want to step on stage knowing that you've done everything that you need to do, you can't really be going in with that mindset. So we know that dieting, especially to those levels of extreme low levels of body fat, is going to pose a risk and is going to exacerbate a risk of food focus. So making sure that you've done your homework before starting your prep and that you're very, very, very aware of these things is incredibly important. Another thing to add to that though is that when people make these comments, it's just, sometimes I feel like it really misses context. A lot of people on social media, influencers, call out bodybuilding and say that it's all about the ego and this and that. Some people go into, like, they kind of generalize and say that people go into bodybuilding to mask their problems with body image and food. And yes, it is true for some people, absolutely true. But for most of us that can continue to compete over and over again, I don't think that's reflective of the truth. And in fact, it's just one of my major pet peeves, especially because it just lacks context. So for example, if you were to give me right now a questionnaire that looks at my attitudes towards food, like a screening tool, for example, for eating disorders, I would score very highly. But if you were just to look at those numbers, you would maybe want to like put me in a session with a clinical psychologist to talk about it. But actually, it just misses the whole fucking point. It misses the context. It misses the fact that this is very, very acute. It's for such a short time frame, and that actually out with it, I don't experience that level of food focus. I don't experience that kind of like need or preoccupation with exercise or need to kind of get my steps and do my cardio and all these types of things. So yeah, a lot of these comments on Instagram and social media, they just miss a lot of context and a lot of nuance. So kind of to go back to it, what I was saying is that yes, food's going to be lower than you maybe anticipate. Cardio is going to be higher than you maybe anticipated. There are risks, of course there are risks to entering the bodybuilding contest prep and getting very, very lean. But if you've done your homework and if you've worked around it, it shouldn't pose that kind of like danger risk. And I think that speaking about it and thinking about it ahead of time is really important. So they don't tell you about how low or how hard things are going to get, and also they don't tell you that there are actually things that you can do around to mitigate it. I talk about this a lot, but things like mindful eating in your off season, taking your time to eat food, making sure that your self-worth isn't contingent upon your body image during the off season and during your prep. Someone actually asked me, do you prefer your body when you're lean? And I'm like, I love my body irrespective of it. Like, it's crazy how different I look, but I miss having thick glutes. I miss having thick delts. I miss having boobs. But then I love being shredded too. Like, I love the effort and work that my physique can reflect now, but there's a time and place. So yeah, that's kind of point number 2, I guess, around food and expenditure. Tied into that, and I've already touched upon this, is just the lack of energy. Now, I don't necessarily struggle so much with like the motivation to get my cardio done or my steps or my training, or even with hunger that much for that matter, especially because I've done prep a couple, like this is my 3rd season. I think the first time I did struggle with hunger a lot more, but the thing that no one tells you is just what the lack of energy really feels like. I mean, my best way to describe it for any Harry Potter fan out there, it's like a Dementor has come and has just sucked the living life out of you. It's not that you feel unhappy, it's just that you have no energy for anything. And that kind of, it goes up and down, as you know, but the leaner you get, the less energy you have. And you'll just notice it in small things, like when I'm getting dressed in the morning, I usually would just stand up and put my leggings on and blah, 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 and I'm chatting away to Jack and this and that. But now, like, I sit down on the bed and I'm like, fuck my life, getting dressed. Or if I sit down through the kitchen to have a meal, it takes me so long to get back up and come back into my office. It actually means that sometimes I just eat at my desk. Because I've practiced mindful eating enough, I know that I can kind of still pay attention to my meal while I am at my desk and sort of like separate the process of eating from the process of working. But because if I sit down, honestly, like getting up is just so hard. And the key, kind of tying it back to the food, like low food and high output, is that even with that shite bag energy, you're still going to have to go and train, give it the fucking beans, because you open your logbook and the numbers are the numbers, and you'll get the fear, you'll think, oh, how the hell am I going to do this? But you have to get it done, or you have to do your best in getting it done, should I say, because language matters. You're still going to have to work really hard with your cardio. You're going to have to do your steps with intent. So yeah, the energy, I think that's the thing that I struggle with most. It's just like the lack of energy, especially because ultimately it means that you just don't feel like yourself. And I don't really know how to describe it, because I don't really know exactly what changes, but you just have less tolerance for people's shit. You just cannot be fucked with normal stuff. Even like the effort sometimes of like before the gym, going upstairs and putting my contact lenses in, I'm like, it's so small, it's like so stupid, but I'm like, I cannot be asked, so I just don't. Or thinking, oh, I need to like load up the dishwasher. I mean, it's so dumb, but like you just don't have energy for it. And I think that's the things that I struggle with most. Even like energy to hang out with Jack in the evenings. I just want to go to bed. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to go to bed, read 2 pages of my book before I pass out. And yeah, you just don't have the motivation to do much or engage with much. So that does become hard, because obviously people don't know you for that. I personally consider myself to be quite a bubbly person. I'm always like chatting away to people. And sometimes when you have limited energy for that, it just sucks a little bit, because you're like, fuck me, like I'm not showing up as a person I want to be. But you know it's short term. So yeah, it's just one of those things. I personally find that the hardest, like just the lack of energy, to be honest. The fourth thing that no one really tells you about is both kind of prep brain and your prep like lens and outlook on life. So prep brain refers to just the fact that when you are in a calorie deficit and when you are physically exhausted because you're pushing yourself so hard, your brain just melts. And I genuinely mean that. Like the amount of stupid shit I do is unreal. I'm already clumsy and I'm really messy, but fucking hell, prep makes me 10 times more clumsy, 10 times more messy. I'm covered in bruises all the time. I just bang into stuff in the gym. It's weird. I don't even know how to explain it. And I'm so much messier, and I just forget stuff all the time. Like, see, if I don't write something down in my diary or on my phone, I forget about it. Like my brain just kind of, bye-bye, see you later. And yeah, even just weird stuff like putting the salt in the fridge is one I've done before. The other day, I was just so annoying. The other day I took the recycling out and I just emptied it in the normal rubbish bin. And then I had to like individually pick out the recycling items and put them in the recycling bin. And that was just like brain not thinking, like literally prep brain. You have moments in the day where you're just like sat there thinking, what was I away to do? Like, what the fuck was I away to do there? And yeah, your brain just kind of melts a little bit. In saying that though, I find that when I am focused and when I am working, when I am concentrated, I have much better bouts of work and concentration. So even like the last week, it's been, whoa, I don't even know how I've managed to get so much work done, but I've just been like laser sharp focused on like bouts of an hour to an hour and a half on doing psychology work, which has been amazing. So it's weird. For other random stuff, your brain just is like not there, or like you need to remember to do things, or you need to double check. Like I need to double check three times that I've locked the door, and still I'll be like, oh my god, did I lock the door? Because I just don't remember doing it. I'm just like automatic process. And yeah, so that's one thing. And the other thing is a prep lens. And what I mean by this is, especially as you get close to your shows, the leaner you get, the less of an accurate and objective perception you have of what you actually look like. You cannot see yourself for the way you actually look. So you'll be looking lean, you'll be looking great, but so many things can influence what you actually see, which is, for example, why I've stopped weighing myself before I check in. And it's made such a huge difference, because it means that I can actually look at my physique a bit more objectively. Whereas if I was to step on the scales first, that would skew my perception of my physique. And it's one of the reasons why I have a coach, because Even though I could prep myself, absolutely, I would not want to do that. I would hate doing that. I don't think I could put up with myself during prep because, yeah, the self-doubt, you just can't make rational decisions about your own body because you're always kind of like unpacking and pinpointing all the like mini faults, like, oh, you know, I've still got some body fat to come off here, like, am I going to be ready, yada yada yada. Whereas actually having a coach can really help with that objective pair of eyes. I personally find this harder in between shows as opposed to like in the lead up to the first show, but now because I've got such a long season coming up, we know that we're not going to be 100% for my first show because we can't be 100% for my first show, otherwise I'll be burnt the fuck out by the end. And that's really hard. That's really, really, really hard because I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready. So actually having Vaughan be able to look over and make sure that, yeah, the rational lens is there and that my prep lens has gone to fuck, or like my Clara brain is just like whatever, ignored, is just so important. And I think, yeah, another thing to remember here too is that once you've completed a prep, your perception of what your body lean looks like is going to be skewed forever. Like, it's going to be skewed forever. I know that when I'm like in the peak of my off season, I know that people look at me on Instagram and see my body as like body goals. But when I compare that to where I am now, I'm like, wow, I cannot believe like how different I look. Not bad, not worse or anything, just so different. And that's just because my idea of what lean looks like is skewed forever. Same now, like, I know I'm lean, but because I'm not like stage lean yet, I'm like, well, I'm not ready, I'm not lean enough. Whereas like actually I do look very lean. So yeah, it's just remembering that your perception of yourself is going to be skewed, and also I suppose like just kind of compounding with all the different things I've already said. That's why having a coach can be so fucking important, because honestly otherwise like your head's just going to be a mumble jumbo. And I think that goes, I genuinely think that it'd be much harder the first time around. Like if I was to try and prep myself for the first time ever, like that'd be a fucking nightmare. But even the more experience you gain, the higher your own standard of yourself becomes. So it can be quite challenging in there too. And I suppose the last thing I want to touch upon in terms of the things I didn't tell you about prep is how fucking expensive it is. Now I know it's expensive for guys too, but for girls, holy motherfucking shit, excuse my French, but competing is expensive. So you can do it cheaper, absolutely. And this is the first year that I'm kind of going a bit more all out, because obviously it's part of my business too. And I'm not a student. And so there are some things that I have been able to afford, but think about bikini, they're expensive as hell. Heels, expensive. Show day makeup, show day tan. Hair if you want to get your hair done. I mean, personally, I'm useless with makeup, so I need to pay someone to do my face, or I would just not step on stage. I've fake tanned myself twice in my life, so I'm paying someone to do my tan for me because I wouldn't be able to do it myself. Hair every year, I've straightened it. I've actually got Nikki, a friend of mine, doing my hair this year, which is amazing. And that's just like for show day. You then need to pay for registration with the federation that you're competing with. If you're competing with multiple federations, you'll have to pay for membership for each one of them and then register for the show that you want to do. You will then want to pay for photography on show day, of course, because you want to have photos to flood Instagram for the next 2 years with those pictures. No shade, I do this. And then if you're traveling, you have to pay for travel, you have to pay for accommodation, you have to pay for your food, you have to pay for your coach, you have to pay for your supplements. Obviously gym membership, you have to pay for posing coaching, which is another thing that comes into it. So it adds up very quickly. So if you are planning on competing, I would suggest start saving now. It doesn't matter how far away you are, literally start saving now. Compaq actually have an amazing resource. It's a spreadsheet on their website. It's called like a competing budget planner or something like that. It's amazing. I use it myself too to manage my expenses and to actually be like, oh my goodness, how much money am I spending here? But it is really expensive. It does add up really quickly. But ultimately, I suppose it's also remembering that you're investing so much time into this process that you do kind of want to splash out a little bit. And because you're not going out for food, doing all these other things, like you are just going to have maybe a bit more money to put towards that. So like my weekly pizza, that 20 quid, that goes into competing, into supplements, into recovery, into whatever it might be. So it's expensive as hell, but you can do it on the cheap. Like, I mean, I've bought secondhand heels, I've bought secondhand bikinis, done my own hair, stayed in Airbnbs or stayed with friends when I've gone away to compete. Like I stayed with a friend of mine from uni in York for my 2 UK Ultimate Physique shows in 2019. Traveling by train with a rail card makes things cheaper. You can travel by bus if you wanted to too. You know, there's ways around it, and if you've planned far enough in advance, it doesn't need to break the bank, but it is going to be expensive. So you might be listening to this and thinking, so why the fuck would you do such a thing, Clara? It sounds absolutely grim. You're going to be hungry, you're going to be tired, it's going to suck, you're going to have no energy, you're going to have to do all these things, you're going to have to sacrifice all this time doing other stuff. And I suppose it's remembering your why and why you actually want to engage in such a process. Like I said at the beginning, if all you want is a trophy, if all you want is accolades, if all you want is that Instagram likes, fucking forget about it now. It's not. It is 100% not worth it. And that motive is not going to get you through those shitty days, those high hunger days, those really difficult low energy days where you still need to go and bash out your cardio. Wanting to do it for a fucking trophy, just for a trophy, is not going to be enough. It's just not going to be enough to push you through those hard days. So understanding what you value in general in life is going to help you identify why you're doing that and tap into your values on the really hard days. I've said this before, but one of the things that I value most is personal development and growth. And for me, personal development and growth is something that I can practice by completing a bodybuilding prep, because it forces me to really get raw and real with myself, to be really open and honest with how I'm feeling, like what my thoughts are, really tapping into why I want to do these things and why I'm pushing myself, and get honest with myself. And the growth that comes from prep, I just cannot explain. If you've competed before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but the growth that comes from it is unreal. I mean, it only takes like getting through one hard day, and anyone who's ever had a hard day in their life, which all of us have, you get to the end of it, or a shitty week, and you go to bed and you think, fucking hell, I'm so proud of myself for getting through that. And prep is essentially that. Like for me, it's almost like stress inoculation. Most of us have had such comfortable lives. We've not really faced many stresses. We've not really faced many difficulties or adversities. And so sometimes the opportunity to develop a resilience or a mental strength for those things, we just don't have that opportunity presented to us as readily, because we've just never faced those adversities, because we're so lucky to live such a comfortable life. So creating that stress by making certain choices such as prepping, for me, is just a way of like pushing my boundaries, pushing my comfort zone, pushing myself, and really seeing, well, what am I made of? Like, when things get hard, what do I do? And if you look all the way back to my vlogs that I started doing during like the first national lockdown back in March 2020, I remember reflecting on the fact that I think lockdown would have been a lot harder had I never prepped, because I kept thinking to myself, if I can, I've done prep, and prep's really hard. And so many of the mindset skills I developed during my previous preps, I could apply them to the coronavirus pandemic, and just like using that kind of thinking strategy of like, this won't go on forever. There will be light at the end of the tunnel. It's not going to get it's not going to continue to get worse. Things can get better. Things can feel better. That really helped. So I suppose a reason, and that's why knowing why you're prepping is so important, and not just jumping on the bandwagon because it looks cool on Instagram is really, really important, because it's not worth it for that. It's just, if Instagram didn't exist, I'd definitely still be competing, because I love it. I love being on stage. I'm a performer, I'm a dancer, it's what I grew up doing, and the chance to put on a sparkly bikini and prance about with a fucking tan is just the thing of dreams, really. It's like RuPaul's Drag Race fantasy in real life for me. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Of course, does it help my business now? Yes, it does. And is it nice to get likes on Instagram? Of course it is, but it's so much more than that. So, so many things I didn't tell you about prep. Just to summarize it, remember, it's a choice. And it's important to know why you're making that choice before you even embark on prep. It's going to get harder than you think it might get, especially if you've never prepped before. You're going to experience hunger levels that you've never experienced before out of choice. You're going to experience tiredness levels that you've never experienced before out of choice. And you're still going to have to push yourself really fucking hard. There is a risk to developing a greater food focus, a greater focus on your body shape, but there are ways to mitigate it, so don't feel scared just because you've seen someone on Instagram say that they developed an eating disorder off the back of a bodybuilding prep. It doesn't have to be that way, and there's many ways, many strategies you can use to manage the potential risk or mitigate those potential risks. Point number 3 was, the tiredness. You're not going to feel like yourself for quite an extended period of time, and that might affect some of your relationships, some of your ability to socialize and hang out with other people, but that's okay. It's part of the process. As long as you know what you're signing up for, then you're fine. Point number 4, prep brain. You're just going to become really clumsy, a bit stupid. Your brain's not going to work as well, and also your perception of yourself is going to be completely skewed for quite an extended period of time. And finally, it's expensive as hell, so get saving. So I'll wrap up the vlog here. I don't even know how long I've been talking for. Hopefully not more than half an hour, because I do have my deep tissue masseur coming in a second to sort my back out. So I'm going to wrap the vlog up here, but I hope you enjoyed it. In next week's vlog, I will be talking about the different psychological skills that have helped me through this prep, particularly from an applied psychologist perspective, and how actually doing the job of sport and exercise psychologist as a trainee has supported me in this year's journey. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below if there's anything I forgot, if you've prepped before, like if I've missed anything, or if you've got any other questions off the back of that. And I will see you all in next week's vlog. Thank you so much. Bye for now.